The story begins in the South Pacific Ocean, where a huge and technologically advanced Russian research vessel called Academic Vladislav Volkov is shown communicating with the Mir space station. This ship is no ordinary research vessel. It is equipped with scientific laboratories and cutting-edge Russian equipment, designed for space communications and data analysis. Suddenly, from deep space, a strange glowing energy begins approaching the Mir station. The scientists on board notice the light but assume it is harmless. Within seconds, the bright energy strikes with the force of a lightning bolt, completely destroying Mir's systems and killing everyone on board. That same energy, after passing through, redirects itself toward Earth. On Earth, the crew aboard the Volkov suddenly loses contact with the Mir station. Confusion turns into chaos as the ship's systems begin to fail. A massive electrical discharge descends from the sky, strikes the Volkov's antenna, and severely damages the vessel. One of the scientists, Nadia, notices that their computer systems are being interfered with. Data is being stolen, and the entire system seems to be hijacked. What happens next is unexplained, creating a disturbing sense of mystery. On a seemingly abandoned ship, a group of opportunists arrive to claim a reward by transporting the vessel to Russia. But what they don't expect is that inside awaits their worst nightmare: a group of killer robots determined to eliminate them. So today, we're taking a look at Virus. 7 days later, we are introduced to a battered tugboat named Sea Star, sailing through the same dangerous waters. The crew struggles to tow a massive cargo barge through a violent storm. Waves crash hard, flooding the barge and threatening to sink both vessels. The captain, Robert Everton, is a stubborn and emotionally broken man. When Steve Baker, one of the crew members, suggests cutting the tow cable to save their own ship, Everton refuses. He and his son had invested everything they had into that cargo. Steve warns him that if he doesn't cut the cable, they will all go down. When Everton draws a weapon to assert control, Steve confronts him. But before the situation escalates, the tow cable snaps on its own, and the barge is lost to the sea. Everton collapses, defeated, while Steve warns him never to threaten him again. Besides Steve and Everton, the crew includes Woods, Hiko, Richie, Julio, and a skilled navigator named Kelly Foster. After losing the cargo, they attempt to redirect the tugboat and survive the storm. The next morning, the damage is evident. The Sea Star is taking on water. They discover a hole in the lower hull and, with no quick solution in sight, try to call for help over the radio. But being so far out at sea, they receive no response. Just then, they detect a massive ship on the radar. It's the Volkov. The crew attempts several times to establish radio contact with the vessel, but receives no reply. Despite the silence, they decide to approach the ship in hopes of finding help or resources. The lack of communication is unsettling, but they proceed anyway. Everton, on the verge of giving up due to financial ruin, changes his mind when he is informed about the abandoned ship. According to maritime law, rescuing an abandoned vessel can grant the discoverers a portion of its value. Considering the Volkov's size and purpose, the crew estimates they could earn $4 million each. While everyone except Foster is excited by the idea of getting rich, Foster remains skeptical. Why would such an advanced ship be completely abandoned? Exploring the Volkov, they find it in deplorable condition: ruined interiors, destroyed equipment, bloodstains, and no sign of the crew. The ship is completely silent with no power at all. Foster assumes it may have been struck by lightning, but raises a chilling question: where are the bodies? Everton, seeing an opportunity to get rich, orders the crew to take the ship to a nearby port. Steve and Julio work to restore the Volkov's power, and soon the vessel begins to show signs of life. But something is not right. Foster notices the ship's computers are operating on their own, despite no one being at the controls. She reports this to Everton, but he dismisses her concerns. Meanwhile, the security cameras throughout the ship are active and someone, or something, seems to be controlling them. Just as the crew prepares to maneuver the Volkov, its anchor mysteriously drops, crashing onto the tugboat and rendering it unusable. Amid the chaos, Hiko is injured in the leg and Steve jumps into the water to rescue him. They manage to pull him aboard the Volkov, shocked and unsure if the anchor fell by accident or if someone is on board. As soon as the incident occurs, Steve runs up to the deck, but Julio is still in the engine room. Steve quickly contacts him and informs him that their tugboat has sunk, warning him there might be someone else on the mysterious ship. He tells him to secure the doors tightly. Steve, furious over what happened, proceeds with the original plan as the captain insisted, take the abandoned ship to a nearby port and claim it. Meanwhile, Hiko is taken to the infirmary, where Foster begins treating his wounds. But then something completely unexpected happens. One of the lockers in the room opens with a creak, and a masked woman suddenly bursts out, firing a weapon at them. Fortunately, none of the crew members are hurt. Taking advantage of the moment, Steve tackles her and knocks her unconscious with a blow to the head. When the captain learns there is someone alive on board, he is not pleased at all, since according to maritime law, if even one person is alive on a ship, it is no longer considered abandoned, which means there is no salvage right, no millions, no reward. The crew checks the woman's backpack and finds several weapons inside, raising serious questions. Why is she the only survivor on this massive ship? And what happened to the rest of the crew? Meanwhile, in the lower decks, Richie and Woods stumble upon what appears to be a weapons storage room. Richie, who once served in the military, recognizes the importance of what they've found. Without hesitation, he grabs as many weapons as he can carry. As they continue exploring, they arrive at a missile room, a high-security area that puts Woods on edge. He clearly feels uncomfortable and wants to get out as soon as possible. But Richie is too intrigued. He wants answers. He wants to know exactly what happened there. Suddenly, they hear something. A mechanical sound echoes down the corridor and a small electric robot rolls past them. Startled, Richie instinctively reacts and shoots it to pieces. They continue moving forward until they reach a chamber unlike anything they've ever seen. Machines everywhere, all running, but not a single person present. The worst part is that these machines seem to be operating completely on their own, assembling parts, moving as if they have a mission. Some of the robots even appear to be built with human tissue. It seems that some kind of terrifying experiment or secret project is underway. As they try to understand this strange and disturbing scene, Richie shuts down the main power in the area, but moments later, the systems power back on by themselves. Suddenly, a small robotic device armed with a nail gun begins shooting at them. Richie dives to the side just in time, but Woods isn't so lucky. A nail pierces his shoulder. Panicked, they fire in all directions and flee the room as fast as they can. After seeing the unconscious woman who had attacked them earlier, Steve begins to worry. If she's here, there could be others. Steve quickly warned Julio to secure the doors and stay alert, but then he lost all contact with him. What Steve didn't know was that, while Julio was in the control room, he noticed a group of electrical cables disappearing into a dark hole in the floor. Curious, he went to investigate, but the moment he leaned in, something emerged from the darkness and dragged him inside. Back on deck, Steve instructed Richie and Woods to meet him in the control room. But when they arrived, he was shocked to find Woods severely injured. They reached the door, but what Steve saw left him stunned. The control room door had been welded shut from the outside. There was no way to enter. Julio was nowhere to be found. Before they could process what was happening, they saw a shadowy figure in the distance, and suddenly, gunfire erupted. Steve, Richie, and Woods dropped to the ground, barely dodging the bullets. They scattered, hiding wherever they could. Meanwhile, the masked woman who had attacked them earlier had regained consciousness. Her name was Nadia, a scientist we had briefly seen during the opening sequence. Still shaken and starving after being stranded for over a week, Nadia immediately warned the others, "Cut the ship's power or everyone will be in danger." But no one understood what she meant. All she could think about was food. She was hungry and exhausted. As she devoured everything she could find, the captain pressured her for answers. "Where is the rest of your crew?" Nadia looked at him and replied bluntly, They're all dead." She insisted again. "Shut off the power. That thing needs electricity to survive." Confused, the captain asked, "What thing are you talking about?" And that's when Nadia said something that sounded completely absurd. It came from the Mir space station. The captain immediately dismissed her as delusional, but Nadia wasn't lying. When she had the chance, she pushed the captain and ran. Foster chased after her and managed to catch up a short distance away. She tried to calm her and gently asked, "Tell me everything. What really happened here?" Nadia, visibly shaken, finally opened up. 8 days ago, we were in communication with the Mir space station, and then something unknown collided with us from space. Whatever it was, it boarded the ship. At first, we thought it was just a system failure, so we shut off all the transmitters. But then the computers began operating on their own. That thing, whatever it was, started absorbing our data, learning from us, studying us, and discovering how to kill us. Only she and her husband Alexei managed to survive for a while. They tried to cut every cable, every connection. Foster, still trying to understand, asked, "What were you fighting against?" Nadia replied, "Machines." Foster didn't believe her at first, but the truth was even worse. They weren't ordinary machines. What Nadia spoke of wasn't mechanical at all. It was a form of energy, something alive, something with consciousness, and it needed only one thing to exist: electricity. It traveled through wires, machines, even computers. It fed on energy, expanding wherever it could. And what did that alien entity really want? That they were about to find out. Even though Nadia was telling the truth, no one was ready to believe her. To prevent her from attacking or escaping again, Hiko, the captain, and Foster tied her hands. The captain had just learned that Julio was missing and was now losing his patience. Furious, he pointed a gun at Nadia and threatened her, demanding to know where his crew member was. He accused her of making up lies about the ship, but Foster stepped in and stopped him. It was then that Steve, Richie, and Woods returned with the body of the man who had attacked them on the lower deck. Except it wasn't really a man. His body was almost entirely mechanical, with only a few human parts remaining. It was something else, a kind of advanced biomechanical hybrid. Observing the body, Foster turned to Nadia and asked her to explain everything, once and for all. Nadia took a deep breath and began. She said that when the alien entity arrived on their ship, it took total control. It released poisonous gas, killing much of the crew. Then, since it had no physical form of its own, it began creating its own bodies. At first, it built small machines, basic worker robots. Then it began using human bodies, combining flesh with metal to build something far more terrifying: a synthetic army. The technology behind all of this was beyond human comprehension. The few survivors that remained were eventually hunted and killed by these enormous mechanical creatures. Only Nadia and her husband Alexei managed to survive a little longer. They knew that if this energy-based life form managed to escape the ship and access Earth's systems, it would destroy the entire planet, just as it had destroyed that vessel. And the body lying before them was Alexei, Nadia's husband. But the captain refused to believe any of it. He claimed that Nadia and her team had been conducting twisted experiments on humans, and that now that everything had gone wrong, they were trying to cover it up. Nadia, holding back tears, simply said, "That's my husband's body. Why would I lie?" Before they could continue arguing, a violent storm began approaching. If they wanted to survive, they needed to get the ship moving, and fast. But the engines were still offline, so everyone headed to the lower levels to restart them. Just as they reached the lower area, a massive machine attacked them. That's when they saw Julio. But he was no longer himself. His body had been fused with metal and cables. He had been turned into a cyborg. During the attack, Woods was brutally killed. They ran to the communications room in hopes of sending a distress signal, but Nadia and Alexei had already destroyed the transmitters earlier, to prevent the alien entity from spreading its signal. Richie tried to repair the equipment, but the captain suddenly smashed it, revealing his true intentions. He wanted to take the ship for himself and claim the reward. He didn't care that everyone's lives were in danger. That was the last straw. Foster struck him hard and declared, "You're no longer the captain." Nearby, Richie noticed a computer that was still functioning. He realized that if this alien entity was everywhere inside the ship, maybe they could try to communicate with it. He attempted to make contact. The alien's response was cold. "You are a threat to this planet. Like a virus. Humanity must be eliminated." It explained that it needed parts from human bodies, brains, spines, arms, legs. Richie's face turned pale. "To it were nothing but spare parts," he said. That could only mean one thing. If they wanted to survive, they would have to destroy it completely. But this alien entity was intelligent. It was constantly watching them through the ship's security cameras. Steve came to a conclusion. "We have to sink the ship. Kill the power. It's the only way to end it." Shocked by Julio's horrid condition, Richie panicked and decided to escape on his own. He separated from the group. The captain, still obsessed with the money, stayed behind. In a last act of desperation, he tried to ally himself with the alien entity. It lured him into the lower decks. There, he saw how it operated quickly and efficiently, cutting the bodies of the dead and assembling more synthetic soldiers. It called him toward it. What happened next isn't shown, but we know it wasn't good. Meanwhile, Steve, Nadia, Foster, and Hiko realized that the doors around them were being welded shut from the outside. The machines were trying to trap them. Instead of going deeper, they ran toward the upper part of the ship, but by now the vessel was caught in the middle of the storm. In another section, Richie had reached the missile room. Panicked and desperate, he gathered all the explosives he could find. He wasn't willing to die there. During the chaos, Hiko was also killed. And then, the captain returned. But he was no longer human. He had been transformed into one of them. He attacked the remaining crew members. The three fought with everything they had, and finally Nadia managed to place a grenade inside the captain's mechanical body. Seconds later, he exploded. After all they had witnessed, Nadia proposed a desperate solution. "We have to flood the engine room with diesel. One spark, and the entire ship will explode and sink." With no better option, the survivors, Steve, Foster, and Nadia, headed to the lower decks and began pumping diesel into the ship's lower compartments. But there was a problem. Earlier, when Everton gave his mind to the machine, it had learned everything, including their plan to stop it. The alien intelligence sent a massive machine to intercept them. It captured Foster and began torturing him, even burning his face, to extract information about the explosives. Just then, Richie, who had planned to escape alone, returned, armed and ready. He couldn't abandon his friends. He opened fire and helped repel the machine, saving Foster in the process. But his victory didn't last. Before they could escape, another machine attacked them, this time going directly after Richie. He fought bravely but didn't survive. Before dying, he whispered to Steve the final part of the escape plan. Now only Steve, Nadia, and Foster remained. But as they ran to safety, debris blocked their path. Foster was trapped. Without hesitation, Nadia sacrificed herself, staying behind so Foster could escape. Shocked and devastated, Foster was finally found by Steve, who led her to the missile room. There was Richie's last resort, an improvised escape pod equipped with a rocket and connected to the ship's explosives. Only one person could escape in it. Steve insisted that Foster take the pod. As soon as the rocket launched, a set of cables connected to it would trigger the ship's explosives. And just as Foster climbed aboard, more machines arrived. They tried to stop them, but Foster pressed the launch button, clinging to Steve as the rocket soared upward. Seconds later, the detonators were activated. All the explosives went off at once in a massive explosion of fire. The entire ship was destroyed, completely erased beneath the ocean. Miraculously, a nearby vessel picked up their distress signal and came to the rescue. Steve and Foster had survived, but more importantly, they had saved the rest of humanity. Because if that alien energy had escaped into the world, it would have turned Earth into the same nightmare that ship had become. And thus we come to the end of the movie. The concept of the alien entity in this film is truly fascinating. An intelligent energy that infects machines, learns from us, and sees humanity as nothing more than a set of spare parts. What made this movie stand out was its use of practical effects, instead of relying on CGI or modern visual effects. The team used detailed animatronics and real set design, which gave it a raw and realistic aesthetic that still holds up today. If this movie were made today, digital effects might have enhanced it, but there's no doubt the effort put into these effects added a terrifying and visceral charm. We hope you enjoyed the movie.